I apparently need to remind the internet of something that shouldn't need to be explained to people, but for some reason, like people are slow, and so I have to do this. Okay, I just wanted to make this for some of the peanut gallery people in the back that like to make some of the snide commentary when somebody goes and does something a little bit ironic on the line. There's a distinction between something being ironic and something being false and wrong. So yeah, and here's what I like. If you want like the standard way of doing this and how I would make this argument is that what I'm going to say is like, if I go on Facebook and say that I'm concerned about Facebook's privacy invasions, I am being ironic. Yes, I'm not wrong though to make that argument, and what I'm saying is not untrue because of the fact that I'm making it on the platform that is invading people's privacy. Like, I just needed to get that across because like people are pointing out the hypocrisy that's part of the action, as if the hypocrisy of it makes it false. And it's like that's not how logic actually works. Like, I might be engaging in a behavior that's a little bit ironic, but I'm not wrong to do it. I'm not. My argument isn't falsified by the fact of my behavior. Being that way. I've always sort of embraced irony in that kind of way. I mean, I'm part of a pack, like a super like a pack, political action committee that exists for the primary purpose of ending like super PACs, super political action committees. I mean, if I didn't like have a strong stomach for doing things that are actually ironic and yet I believe them despite the irony, I wouldn't be able to to do this or be part of these organizations in the first place. I mean, Wolfpack is a highly ironic pack. We're fighting to end the very existence of organizations like ourselves. you know we don't actually believe that what we do and what the pack does should actually exist in politics. It's making a fucking mess out of everything, and the other special interest groups are doing things like making a lot of legislation about doing anything useful to the climate, for instance, impossible because of the fact that they've got the money invested in all the money and all the corporations that are benefiting from the destruction of the environment. So no matter what your issue is, there's going to be a corporation that doesn't want the reform that you want. And so you should focus on the money first and then go about getting the reform that you actually want. But yeah, I've embraced irony for a very long time, and so it's made me kind of have to come up here and make a very strong point, and that I find it really frustrating because there's always that guy in the comments which will be like, curious that you would be concerned about privacy, but you'd actually use Facebook. That doesn't seem very self-consistent with your concerns. And it's like, well, actually, I kind of use Facebook inside what a metaphorical like condom that's been in terms of code, and that like I've got like the Facebook container set up so that like it keeps its cookies from throwing themselves in other on other sites, so that unless you allow them inside the container, and gathering data from other websites, so that the Firefox containers are up. I've got like ad blocking, cookie blocking, sort of stuff that, on this particular implementation of my computer. I have quite a few browser add-ons that I use to kind of hamper their ability to gather data. And there's no term that like, so when you come and you make that comment, like the only thing that I can think is like, sir, are there terms of service on this particular platform that tell me that I'm not allowed to make a post that calls out Facebook's privacy abuses? Because I don't, it's curious because I'm reading the terms of service myself, and I do know that there are things that are prohibited, but there's nothing in here that expressly prohibits like issuing input to them that complains about their privacy invasive practices. So yes, it's rather ironic that somebody would find themselves part of this particular platform, but they're not wrong. Their argument that Facebook invades people's privacy is not incorrect because of the fact that they're engaging in a sort of ironic behavior. And the other thing that I wanted to add to all of, so like because of the fact that there's this distinction between something being ironic and it being false, you know like that is, the fact that people don't respect that distinction has always sort of been an intellectual frustration of mine. Yeah, it doesn't really work for me. So yeah, another thing that I wanted to say is that the appeals to hypocrisy as far as logic, from an intellectually honest point of view, a person can make a really strong point and still and be a hypocrite. So it's like, yes, that person might be hypocritical or a hypocrite themselves, but they're not wrong. They're just a hypocrite that's done something that is inconsistent with what they claim to actually believe, and that they're not wrong. And I find examples of that a lot, unfortunately, in the real world. Like a classic example would be something like somebody that tells you, like, to demonstrate this particular problem, like it would be something like, so and so smokes like 2 packs a day, but wants to tell you that it's a terrible habit and that you shouldn't pick it up. Should we conclude, because of the fact that they're behaving hypocritically, that we should take up a habit of smoking ourselves because of the fact that they behaved hypocritically? No, and no one that was behaving reasonably would basically draw that conclusion out of the experience. That person's being hypocritical, yes, but they're telling you something that nevertheless, despite their hypocrisy, happens to be good advice. Like we all sort of know this on some level, and yet a lot of people love to play the hypocrisy card. But if you're going to say that ad hominem arguments are bad arguments that are just personal insults and against the man, and that any argument against the man's moral character rather than his argument is out of bounds to the debate, to any debate, and really ought to be out of bounds to a debate, then what follows is the realization that appealing to a person's being a hypocrite should be off limits as well, because the term hypocrite in of itself is a pejorative and an insult, and it's used to substitute against actual logical argumentation because it feels good, and you can win points by calling somebody a hypocrite, but you're not actually being intellectually honest when you do it. Because an intellectually honest person would know this and acknowledge this reality of the situation. The truth of the matter is that, a hypocrite is no better than an ad hominem fallacy. It's just the one ad hominem fallacy that we love to call people out on the most in our society, and that feels good to do, you know, and doing it feels really good to call it out, and it feels great when a bunch of people take your side because of the fact that that person is behaving hypocritically. But even still, it doesn't actually make them wrong, and that's what kills me about all of it. It's a fancier, like, more sympathetically, like, people will be more sympathetic to this ad hominem if you play it than most other ad hominems. Like, you can call people a bunch of offensive names and they'll be like, well, you didn't actually make an argument, you just advanced a bunch of insults and dismiss you on that basis. But you call them a hypocrite and a bunch of people will take your side, and that's the truth of the matter on an intellectually honest level about that particular logical fallacy. And it's you're substituting, like, actual, like, refutations of the person's actual arguments for arguments against the person themselves, because you're too lazy to actually refute their argument, and it's easier to make the person making the argument look bad than it is to actually refute what it is that they had to say, you know like. But me, like, I'm more interested in what the truth is than I am winning the debates. And so, because of that, I find myself in this state of, like, just kind of rolling my eyes when people play that card, because it's like, I'd rather be, like, right and true and follow what the actual truth is and what honesty leads me to, than when these sort of petty matches that take place between internet users. I'm more interested in getting to the root and to the truth of what things are than I am winning points and winning a debate. And so because of the fact that things are that way, like I don't find myself really deeply sympathetic to the appeals to hypocrisy that people play in our society. I'd rather it's much more important to me to be right and to be on the side of truth than it is to win debates and actually come out on top of those arguments. And so because of that, I have to be really honest with you and also with myself, and intellectually, and a more intellectually honest position would be like, we don't appeal to hypocrisy because we now realize that it's just another ad hominem. It's just the one that the culture actually will take your side in doing when you make it against somebody, but it's still not honest. So it's an argument that's made in bad faith because you're playing the hypocrisy card rather than actually making us a critique of the person's actual arguments. And so like that, that should be out of bounds on the basis that a person may be a terrible person, but they can still make some really great points despite their being terrible people. And so in all of this, I kind of wanted to get on here and basically skewer this. So complaining about Facebook's privacy invasions on Facebook is ironic, and it might not be entirely self consistent. Maybe the most self consistent thing to do would be to quit using Facebook as a result of this. But I think that we all get a huge amount of benefit out of the network benefits of using these two particular platforms, Facebook and Twitter, that we, despite our objections to some of the practices of the website, use them, and I don't see what's wrong with that. I don't think that I should be demonized for it or called out or told or dismissed out of hand as a result of it. I think that it's kind of bullshit. Like, yes, I'm like in doing a behavior like that would be ironic, but that doesn't mean it's wrong.